Welcome back, everyone. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you are enjoying this content. Now, let's jump headlong into part 2 of my series on WoW Classic versus Retail. Why play an MMO over a single-player RPG? Most likely, it is to engage in a shared world with other RPG fans in a way that brings about a grand, impressionable, emergent, and highly rewarding social experience, much like that experience in D&D. Unlike D&D, though, the MMO developer in their expansive world is automated, always available, and always full of other people playing. This gives MMOs a key advantage over traditional tabletop RPGs. MMOs do not require you to leave your house, nor interact with real people face-to-face, giving them less barrier to entry and making them more accessible to people from all different walks of life. But why are some MMOs so much better at captivating and retaining an audience, while others tend to flounder and die almost upon arrival? Wildstar. One of the reasons is that good MMOs brilliantly foster a sense of togetherness, camaraderie, and community. But how do they do this? And why do so many of the genre's big hitters seemingly not understand how or why this is key to their game's long-term success and impact? We will address these questions as best we can in today's video. Over the years, with the inclusions of cross-realm battlegrounds, cross-realm looking for group, looking for raid, and many other solo player improvements, such as drastically reducing leveling time and difficulty, Blizzard has slowly and methodically introduced rewards to their game that can be obtained without or with minimum social interaction. As we saw earlier in my first video, it is an innate neurological trait of the human brain to be motivated by reward, and therefore it is only natural that the players are motivated to do solo content or solo queue content when that content offers similar and sometimes better rewards than the social content with less overall frustration and friction. This is not, I repeat, not the fault of the player base. They are naturally motivated by rewards and will naturally do activities that acquire those rewards, regardless of if those activities are more or less social than others. What players will also do, however, is notice, whether consciously or subconsciously, when rewards are obtained too easily. Why is that? Because, as we discussed in my previous video again, fun in gaming is largely determined by the drive for mastery in that game. And so rewards that are obtained without an element of mastery involved are innately less fun and less motivating to our natural reward systems. This is precisely the reason why so many World of Warcraft players struggle to enjoy retail. There are many rewards and many ways to obtain them, but they can often be obtained with little to no effort, and worse, with little to no reliance on and interaction with other players. You may be sharing the same LFR instance with 24 other players, but the limited difficulty involved in beating that instance requires practically no social interaction or mastery of the encounters, or even one's class, for that matter. So what, you may say? The shared world you claim is being destroyed is still there to experience with other players. You just have to queue up to do so, or raid with a mythic raiding guild. But there's a huge problem with this logic. A shared make-believe world only works well when the people sharing it agree to willfully suspend their belief together. And the more obstacles you put in the way of the suspension of belief, the more likely players will fall out of their suspended belief and lose the motivation to play. After all, the rewards are a means to motivate the player, and once their suspension of belief is compromised, the reward is meaningless because the frame in which it had meaning is gone. This is why many players cannot enjoy retail WoW. The frame in which their actions have meaning and reward is constantly threatened by the abundance of immersion-breaking gameplay systems and the ease in which many of these rewards are obtained. So maybe one day a reward means something to you, but the next day it does not because the game failed to retain your suspension of belief, whether it be through the lack of challenge or lack of an immersive gameplay environment. When this happens, players experience a disconnect with the game and tend to seek out something that can more meaningfully reward their actions and maintain the motivation to seek further rewards. In retail WoW, so much of the game is experienced through queuing for activities with cross-realm players. You are constantly reminded by the game's own gameplay systems that what you are playing is not a shared, cohesive world, but an instance video game that includes an open world, like an extra feature. In Classic, by contrast, the open world is the game, and all of the instances are real locations in the game that must be traveled to. This gives Classic's world design a more cohesive and far less fragmented sense of wholeness, and provides the player base far less opportunity to ruin their own suspension of belief. Traveling to Blackrock Mountain may seem tedious and repetitive to those hardcore players who have done so thousands of times, But no matter how often they do it, the fact that they are forced to interface with the game's world and intentionally limited transportation systems provides them with a meaningful journey each and every time, and that the journey is required of them, just as it would be if they truly lived within the hard world of Azeroth. Even the systems of warlock summoning and mage portals are gameplay systems that immerse the player in the world and its lore and improve the game's continuity, because these systems make sense in the context of the fantasy setting, and they do nothing to remind the player that Azeroth is in fact not real. A friend of mine commented that there are no free lunches in Classic, and in some ways, he is definitely right. However, I would argue that there are many free lunches available in the game. They are simply the product of the people, not the gameplay systems themselves. A world like Azeroth is a hard and formidable place, and it makes little sense to introduce gameplay systems that detract from that hardness. However, much like in our world, that hardness induces players to come together and share the burden of the difficulties with each other. I can't count, nor remember, the amount of times random strangers have helped me out in some way or another throughout my Classic journeys, and this is precisely because they recognize the difficulty of life in this version of Azeroth, and they take it upon themselves to share that difficulty with each other. Why do this? It is likely because, as Adam Smith mentions in The Wealth of Nations, and trust me, I'm paraphrasing here, one man's labor is scarce enough to provide him all the luxuries and comforts of life. The necessary sharing of this labor, whether among tailors and cloth farmers, honor farmers and griefers, guildmates, or even the alliance in the Horde, is what makes Classic WoW far more realistic, immersive, and social than Retail WoW. Retail WoW gives each player the power of a nation, whereas Classic WoW requires that its players make alliances and share their labor if they have any hope of being genuinely successful, just like any real society of human beings. This realness better stimulates our natural reward systems and thus provides us a far more fun gaming environment. In our next video, we're going to examine WoW Classic's gameplay loop from a capitalist perspective and focus on the similarities between the psychology of a member of a capitalist society and a member of Classic's version of Azeroth. If you liked this video and are interested in future content about gaming, please leave me a like and subscribe to my channel. Every like really means a lot, and I really value the respect of my viewers. Until the next one, Scarab out.